I want to explain how I use my fantasy as a means of achieving my goals and fulfilling all the big dreams that I have in my life. And at the end, I'll give you a 5-step process so that you can start implementing some of these things. I want you to ask yourself a question, which is, where do our fantasies come from? Something is getting them there. And I think that they're put there so that we can start marching in that direction. Martin Luther King Jr. said, "I have a dream," and then started working to try and fulfill that thing. And I think that's their purpose. They're like a light that gets thrown out ahead of us so that we can start marching in that direction. I think they're meant to become a reality in a way, kind of. And I'll explain more about what I mean there later. And when I say put something, like a fantasy is put in you, think about that for a second. How much control do you have over your dreams, over the things that you want? How long have they been a part of you? How did they get there? And sometimes, at least to me, it seems like it doesn't make any sense at all, that our dreams are not a part of who we are. They're just like this random thing that pops in one day and we're like, man, we would love to do that. It's what's going to give us the most impact, and it's what's going to give us freedom. And so I think our fantasy ultimately is here to lead us to our higher purpose. And it's our job to believe that that fantasy is possible. And side note, I'm putting this to the test in real time right now. So as I'm building whatever it is that I'm building, I still don't know exactly what that is. I want to show people that this is the truth. And so I'm going to be a living example. I'm recording my process, and those will start dropping in June. So if you want to be around for that, make sure you subscribe to the channel. What I'm finding though, as I walk this path, is you need to be ready for your dream to change and morph as you go. So dreams are going to change. Like I said, they're just starting us down a path. And it can be hard to let go of that thing, but we need to remember that what we want in the beginning probably isn't exactly what you wanted anyway. And that's what I meant by we're meant to make our fantasies real in the world. What you'll see is that fantasy is constantly shifting and changing. For example, I knew that I wanted to impact people, and I'm pretty comfortable on camera. And so I got an acting gig thinking that that was a fantasy of mine. I want to come into people's homes and lives and make them laugh and make them think about different things. And I absolutely hated it. But I got in front of this camera and started shooting these videos, and I love this. So we have to be ready for that split in the path, that change that I talked about. You've got to drop your ego and trust that things are going to be even better than you dreamed that they were going to be. And I think most people don't get started towards that fantasy because of fear. A lot of folks that are in fantasy and are dreaming maybe aren't in the place in their life that they want to be right now. And the last thing that they can take, the last thing that I could take, was another failure in my life. But I think the only true failure in life is staying stuck in failure and feeling like a failure. Not doing anything about the life that you hate, that is the only failure. Having something not work out, which eventually will lead you to something that does work out, that is not a failure at all. So we need to get over our failure and start marching towards that path with an open heart, with the knowing that things are going to change. And here's some characteristics of fantasy for you that I think are important to know. I have no idea if I spelled that right. We'll call it good though. So number one is wishing things to be different. Knowing that or believing that your life is terrible right now and you just want things to change. There's nothing wrong with wanting things to change. There is always life everywhere though, and it is important to find what you have in the now. Next is not getting started because you feel stuck in the current conditions that you have. That's another fantasy characteristic. And then thinking you know best and being unwilling to let things look different than you thought it initially would. And I'll just put different outcomes is another characteristic that keeps you stuck in fantasy. Now, what I want instead is to transition from fantasy into what I and the Gene Keys call anticipation. And this, I think, is the key to getting unstuck from your fantasy. And anticipation is the process of bringing fantasy into reality. And first, even though I call it anticipation, what you can't do is just sit around and wait. There is work to be done as we anticipate what is happening, but the work is what I call preservation work. It's work that you get to choose on what you're working on. You get to choose what's important. You get to choose what's worth your time. It's not doing something because you feel like you need to do it, or because you need to make a paycheck, or because you need to support other people. It's deciding to work on something important. Also, taking initiative. So we call it preservation work. And then the next piece is taking initiative. We got to get started doing something, and we need a pure heart when we do it. And so what this means is you can't do something to make money. You can't do something to get more power. You can't do something to get the person that you want in your life. It needs to come from a place of service, from a place of openness, from a place of trust. And you have to trust in what is coming your way. There's a reason that you're getting the feedback from the world that you're getting. And if it's going well, it probably means that you're aligned and doing the right things. If it's not going so well, that is a sign that we need to adjust course, adjust our path. We need to reflect on it and not just throw it out because we don't like what's coming back to us. And feedback is always coming. And just remember, it shows you the next step on the path. It shows you what direction we need to take next. Maybe it morphs the fantasy or the dream a little bit. Things could always change in anticipation as we're building whatever it is we're building. The feedback could change. And so we need to make sure that we keep our ego in check. As success comes, success goes. And that's why it's so important to be in trust and to approach things with an open heart, because this isn't about you, and it could be gone at any moment. And the moment that you get attached to a specific fantasy or a specific direction, that's when we can really get into trouble if the universe or the muse or God or whatever word you want to use decides it has a different plan or a different direction for you. You can't bring something new into the world if you're constantly stuck in your past or in the future. There is no way to be present in the now when you're thinking about those things, when you're thinking about all the things that got you to where you are now, that put you in this place that you have to fantasize about things being different. Or when you're thinking about that ideal future and don't recognize with gratitude, with a spirit of trust and grace, all the good things that you have in your life right now. We need to be able to be present, to pay attention, to bring new things into the world. And that means staying in this moment. That's the power of meditation. That's why so many teachers, so many business people are into meditation and into mindfulness. And those things, thinking about the past and the future, they have their place. It's important to reflect on the feedback that you're getting, on the actions that you took over the past weeks or months or years. It's important to plan for the future, where you want to go, what you want to do, setting goals, milestones, markers. But we need to hold so lightly to those things just in case the path does change. And finally, when you're in anticipation, you have to create space for things to show up in your life. We've got to allow a new thing to come. And that means going through change. That means letting go of the old versions of you. That means letting go of some maybe physical stuff in your life. Maybe changing where you're living. Whatever is being asked of you. You just need to create the room that allows the new thing to come into your life. How is something new going to come into a full cup? It just can't happen. And then we get into what I call the moment. So we had our fantasy, we got stuck there, then we slip into anticipation, and then we come to the moment. And from nothing comes everything. From the void is where we make new and original stuff. This is the Big Bang, right? Science can get us to within microseconds of everything in the universe existing, but they can't get us all the way there because it came from nothing. Everything falls apart and we just don't understand what is in this space where creativity comes from. It's a receiving of grace. It's a trusting that all of a sudden in a moment you look around and your dream has become a reality. It's not how you expected 99% of the time, but also 99% of the time it's even better than you could have imagined. And then the next dream comes and the process will start again. And that's why we can't get attached to the outcome or to the dream. It's not about getting the thing, because as soon as we get the thing, the next thing is going to pop up. So it's not about the outcome. What you'll find if you've had any level of success in your life. So before I was doing this, I had a pretty successful brick and mortar business and I worked for years. Everything else be damned to make money. And I made money and then I was empty because I was like, well, now what do I do? And I'm still miserable and unhappy. So always keeping that in mind as we move forward. And the elephant in the room here is that I'm talking about grace. I'm talking about something coming from nothing. I'm talking about a fantasy but being put into us by something. And so let's just call it what it is. It's been called lots of different things over the years. Maybe it's the muse or the daemon or the higher self or God or the universe. Whatever you want to call it, it's something bigger than you. All amazing creators have talked about this thing, from Tesla to Jimi Hendrix to Benjamin Franklin and everyone in between. And in order to get out of fantasy, you have to trust that the higher self or the daemon knows better than you know. And it shouldn't come as a surprise that I'm saying this right now, right? Like I said, this dream was put into you by something that we don't entirely understand. And if you struggle with that concept, that's totally fine. I want you to think about it however you need to think about it so that it makes sense for you. You basically have a choice though. There have been thousands of years of wisdom traditions, from the Tao Te Ching to Buddhism to Christianity, you get the point, that have told us that there is something that we don't fully comprehend that has our best interests at heart. And we have a choice. Do we want to believe that? Or do we want to believe that everyone is out to get us, we're on an island all by ourselves and we need to figure it out all alone. You have the choice to ignore them, or you have the choice to accept some help that we don't understand. To me, that's a pretty easy choice, because what's the worst thing that happens? Who cares if I'm wrong? Who cares if there's nothing actually there? I believe that there is, but even if there isn't, if it helps you, if it makes you feel good, what's it matter? Okay, so finally we come to our 5-part exercise so that you can get started moving from fantasy to anticipation and waiting for that moment to come through. So number 1 is you're gonna write your fantasy. And this is gonna be a 10-minute process. And all you need is something to write with and a journal, or you can do this in your computer, but you're gonna write stream of consciousness. So non-stop for 10 minutes, just bleh, get it all out on the page, get it all down, write every detail that you can think of, how it's gonna make you feel, what you're gonna do when you have it, anything that comes to your mind for the first 10 minutes. Then you're gonna write down 5 to 10 things that you're going to get if that fantasy comes true, and you're gonna do that in 2 minutes. So examples here, maybe it's a car, it's a boat, it's a house, it's that hot boyfriend or girlfriend, it's lots of money, whatever comes to mind for you. 5 to 10 possible things that you get with that fantasy. Then, step 3 is you're gonna write down what you would feel if you got those things. So if you got the car, what would that make you feel? If you got the boyfriend or girlfriend, what would that do for your heart? Then, next up, we're gonna decide what that fantasy is trying to fulfill on a deeper level. So we have our upper level things, or I guess lower level, depending on how you think about it, but the surface level things is what I was trying to say. We've got what those surface level things would make us feel. Then I want you to think about what is the deeper level thing that would also make you feel that way. So examples for this one, or excuse me, examples for making you feel, before I move on here, is powerful, passionate, generous, trusting. Those are all things that you might feel from getting these 5 to 10 things. Then we move on to the next step, which is what is the fantasy fulfilling on a deeper level? What is the deeper meaning of the fantasy? And that could be if you had feelings of power and generosity, for example, the deepest feeling or the deeper meaning there is being of service in the world. If you had feelings of passion or trust, then the fantasy is more love in your life. So that's the deeper level. So we get those 5 to 10 surface level things. We write down how those would make us feel. And then we think about what is the deeper meaning or the deeper want behind what those feelings are. And then finally, the last step is to write down 5 things you could do now that would move you closer to that fantasy. Remember, it's all about just taking the first step. That's why the fantasy is there in the first place. So, what are 5 things you could do that would achieve this deeper level meaning? Or, doesn't have to be that. You could also just write 5 things that you could do that will get you these more surface level things. They're both going to lead to the exact same place. Eventually, this is going to lead you to the deeper meaning piece anyway. So it's really whatever feels better for you. And then the piece of homework that you have, I said this was a 5-step process, was to actually do one of them. You can't just write them down. You can't just do this exercise. You got to get out there and get started. And if you do this every single day, it doesn't need to be this whole exercise, but if you do one of these things every day and you let go of the need to control how that desired end result shows up and you allow things to shift on the journey, you're gonna find yourself in an end state that is just incredible. Remember, the whole point is that this fantasy is going to change and morph. You have to be open to it. All right. Hope that was helpful. Like I said, stick around. In June, we've got the process that I'm documenting of making my fantasies a reality. And I want to see you there. I really think that I can do this myself and help other people through this process. Don't worry, those of you that stick around for Gene Key stuff, I'm still planning on doing those videos too. I really, really like this process as it is right now. And there's no reason that I can't continue to share and grow. And hopefully we do that together. All right, guys, till next time.